Woody Allen was 45 and had sworn off serious relationships when he met Mia Farrow at a dinner party in 1980. She was 35, recently divorced from Andre Previn, and raising 7 children as a single mother. What began as an unlikely friendship became a 12-year partnership that produced Woody's greatest films and his most devastating personal scandal. But before we dive into this story, if you enjoy untold moments from cinema history, hit that subscribe button and stay with us. It was October 14th, 1980, a crisp autumn evening at Michael's restaurant on East 55th Street in Manhattan, where the cultural elite regularly gathered to discuss art, literature, and the state of contemporary civilization. Woody Allen sat at a corner table, mechanically picking at his dinner, while half listening to the sophisticated conversation flowing around him, when he noticed a delicate blonde woman across the room who seemed completely out of place among the intellectual crowd. Mia Farrow was undeniably Hollywood royalty, daughter of the respected director John Farrow and the classic film actress Maureen O'Sullivan, who had played Jane in the original Tarzan movies. She had been married to Frank Sinatra when she was barely out of her teens, then to the celebrated conductor Andre Previn, with whom she had adopted several children and had biological children as well. But that evening at Michael's, Mia appeared more genuinely interested in discussing her children's bedtime routines, homework challenges, and the logistics of managing a household with 7 children than engaging with the cultural and intellectual topics that dominated Manhattan dinner party conversation among creative professionals. Woody had recently ended his long and emotionally significant relationship with Diane Keaton, and in the aftermath of that breakup, he had convinced himself through extensive psychoanalytic reflection that serious romantic involvement was fundamentally incompatible with his neurotic personality structure and his demanding artistic ambitions. At 45 years old, he had developed elaborate psychological theories, supported by years of therapy sessions, about why marriage and traditional long-term commitment inevitably failed for creative people who required solitude and emotional distance to produce meaningful artistic work. But Mia intrigued him in ways he couldn't rationally explain or categorize using his usual intellectual frameworks. She appeared to be simultaneously sophisticated and innocent, worldly and naive, stunningly beautiful and genuinely intellectual without being pretentious, competitive, or threatening about any of these remarkable qualities. Their first conversation that evening lasted more than 3 hours, ranging widely from discussions of Ingmar Bergman films and European cinema to child psychology and developmental theory, to the existential implications of mortality and the meaninglessness of modern urban existence that preoccupied much of Woody's creative work. During this extended conversation, Woody discovered that beneath Mia's ethereal, almost otherworldly appearance was a sharp intelligence and considerable emotional depth that seemed to complement rather than compete with his own psychological complexity and artistic sensibility. Even more surprisingly to him, Mia seemed genuinely amused rather than annoyed or intimidated by his characteristic neurotic observations about life, death, anxiety, and the fundamental absurdity of human existence that often alienated other people he met socially. She laughed at his jokes not out of social politeness or romantic interest, but from what appeared to be authentic appreciation of his distinctive comedic perspective on anxiety, urban alienation, and the psychological challenges of contemporary life. Within several weeks of their initial meeting, they were spending most evenings together, though they deliberately maintained separate apartments on opposite sides of Central Park that reflected their distinctly different lifestyles and personal needs. Mia lived on the Upper West Side in a spacious apartment that accommodated her growing collection of adopted and biological children, creating a warm, nurturing environment filled with the constant activity and emotional demands of a large, diverse family. Woody remained in his familiar Fifth Avenue penthouse, a carefully organized space filled with thousands of jazz records, multiple clarinet practice rooms, and the kind of solitude and routine that he considered essential for his creative productivity and psychological well-being. Their relationship was unconventional from the very beginning, challenging traditional expectations about romantic partnership and domestic life. They never married, never lived together, and never attempted to merge their distinctly different lifestyles into conventional domestic partnership that might have satisfied social expectations, but compromise their individual identities. Instead, they deliberately created a unique arrangement that allowed both to maintain their separate personal identities, professional commitments, and lifestyle preferences, while sharing significant creative and emotional intimacy that enhanced rather than threatened their individual artistic work. For Woody, this emotional and physical distance was not just preferred, but psychologically essential. He could experience genuine love and meaningful companionship without the claustrophobic demands of traditional marriage and domestic life that he genuinely feared would destroy his artistic productivity and psychological equilibrium. For Mia, the unconventional arrangement allowed her to continue her important humanitarian work with UNICEF, traveling frequently to refugee camps and disaster areas around the world, while also focusing her considerable energy on raising her children without having to accommodate a husband's career demands, domestic expectations, or need for constant attention. What made their partnership genuinely extraordinary, both personally and professionally, was how it seemed to enhance rather than compromise both their creative work and individual artistic development during the 12 years they were together. Mia became Woody's primary creative muse and professional collaborator, appearing in 13 films over 12 years, while inspiring some of his most sophisticated, emotionally complex explorations of love, family relationships, and the psychological challenges of modern life. Their first professional collaboration was A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy in 1982, a period piece set in the early 1900s that could have easily become a simple costume farce. But Mia's natural grace, intelligence, and emotional authenticity elevated the material into a sophisticated meditation on romance, sexual desire, and the intersection of intellectual and physical attraction. But it was Zelig in 1983 that truly demonstrated the full creative potential of their personal and professional partnership. Mia's performance as Dr. Eudora Fletcher, the psychiatrist who falls in love with her chameleon patient, required her to anchor an extremely experimental film that combined documentary techniques with fictional narrative in ways that could have easily become an unwatchable intellectual exercise. Her ability to bring emotional authenticity and psychological realism to what was essentially a surreal concept about identity and conformity made the film accessible to general audiences while maintaining its sophisticated commentary on American culture and individual psychology. Purple Rose of Cairo in 1985 showcased Mia's remarkable range as an actress, playing Cecilia, a Depression-era movie fan whose favorite screen character literally steps out of the film to romance her in real life. The movie explored complex themes about the relationship between reality and fantasy, art and life, that reflected both Woody's persistent artistic preoccupations and their own relationship between public personas and private emotional truth. Mia's performance required her to convincingly portray a character caught between mundane reality and magical possibility, anchoring a fantastical premise with genuine emotional vulnerability that made audiences care about Cecilia's romantic confusion rather than simply appreciating the film's conceptual cleverness. Hannah and Her Sisters in 1986 represented what many critics consider the absolute peak of their creative collaboration. Mia played Hannah, the emotionally stable center of a complex family drama involving romantic betrayal, sibling rivalry, and existential crisis, while Woody explored his character's midlife anxiety and romantic confusion. The film won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Supporting Actor for Michael Caine and Best Supporting Actress for Diane Wiest, and demonstrated conclusively how their personal relationship enriched rather than complicated their professional work, allowing both to access emotional authenticity that elevated the material beyond typical romantic comedy. Radio Days in 1987 effectively used Mia's natural nostalgic sensibility and emotional warmth to anchor Woody's childhood memories of 1940s Brooklyn, creating one of his most emotionally accessible and widely appealing films through her ability to embody both innocence and wisdom simultaneously. Another Woman in 1988 featured Mia in a dramatic departure from her usual roles, playing a philosophy professor forced to confront the emotional limitations of her carefully controlled intellectual life. The film showcased her ability to handle serious, dramatic material while maintaining the psychological complexity that made her such an effective collaborator in Woody's explorations of modern relationships. During these professionally productive years, their personal relationship was reportedly happy and stable despite its unconventional structure that defied traditional expectations about romantic partnership and domestic life. Mia adapted gracefully to Woody's rigid daily routines and psychological quirks, his need for solitude, his elaborate food preferences, his anxiety about travel and social situations. While he genuinely appreciated her maternal warmth and her commitment to humanitarian causes that expanded his own emotional awareness and social consciousness. They traveled together to film locations around the world, collaborated extensively on script development and character creation, and maintained what appeared to outside observers to be a genuinely loving partnership that successfully satisfied both their professional ambitions and personal emotional needs. Mia also became a devoted mother figure to the children they adopted together during their relationship, Dylan in 1985 and Moses in 1986, while continuing to raise her previous children from her marriage to Andre Previn, including Soon-Yi Previn, who had been adopted from Korea as a young child and was entering adolescence during the early years of Woody and Mia's relationship. Their unconventional home life, while complex and demanding, appeared to outside observers to be stable and genuinely nurturing for all the children involved. Woody became actively involved with the children's educational activities and extracurricular interests, while Mia continued to support his artistic ambitions and creative projects while pursuing her own acting career and extensive humanitarian work. But the relationship began to show signs of deterioration in the late 1980s as both their personal lives and professional commitments became increasingly complicated and emotionally demanding. The pressure of constantly working together on film projects while maintaining separate residences and distinct personal lives created a form of emotional distance that neither seemed able to bridge effectively, despite their obvious mutual affection and professional compatibility. Woody's increasing creative control over their collaborative projects sometimes made Mia feel more like a talented employee than an equal creative partner, while his persistent refusal to commit to marriage or shared domestic life left her feeling emotionally insecure despite their long and apparently successful partnership. Meanwhile, Mia's growing family responsibilities and her expanding humanitarian commitments with UNICEF began competing directly with the time and emotional energy she could devote to their relationship and collaborative creative work. The beginning of the end of their relationship came in January 1992, when Mia made a discovery that would shatter her trust and unleash a cascade of accusations, legal battles, and public scandal that would completely destroy their partnership and fundamentally alter both their lives and careers forever. While cleaning Woody's Fifth Avenue apartment, something she occasionally did despite their separate living arrangements, Mia discovered nude photographs of her adoptive daughter Soon-Yi hidden in a stack of papers on Woody's desk. Soon-Yi was 21 years old at the time and a college student at Drew University, but she had been part of Woody and Mia's extended family for over a decade, essentially growing up under Woody's influence during their relationship. The discovery was devastating for Mia on multiple levels. Not only did it represent a betrayal of their romantic relationship, but it also violated her trust as a mother and raised disturbing questions about Woody's behavior toward the children in their blended family over the years they had been together. Mia's initial reaction was a mixture of shock, rage, and protective maternal instinct. She immediately confronted Woody about the photographs, demanding explanations about his relationship with Soon-Yi and about his behavior toward all the children in their family. Woody's response was defensive and, according to Mia, showed little understanding of why she would find his relationship with Soon-Yi inappropriate or emotionally devastating. He argued that Soon-Yi was an adult who could make her own decisions, and that their relationship had nothing to do with his role as a father figure in her childhood. But for Mia, the issue wasn't just about Soon-Yi's legal age or ability to consent. It was about the fundamental violation of family boundaries and the exploitation of power dynamics that had existed for years within their unconventional but supposedly loving household. The situation escalated rapidly when Mia accused Woody not only of having an inappropriate relationship with Soon-Yi, but also, more devastatingly, of sexually abusing their 7-year-old adopted daughter Dylan during a visit to Mia's Connecticut home in August 1992. According to Mia and Dylan's statements, the alleged abuse occurred in the attic of Mia's country house, while other family members were present elsewhere in the home. Dylan, who was renamed Malone and later took the name Dylan again as an adult, claimed that Woody had touched her inappropriately in ways that constituted sexual abuse. Woody denied the abuse allegations categorically and emphatically, calling them false and vindictive accusations designed to destroy his reputation and gain advantage in the custody battle that was developing over their children. He maintained his innocence consistently and claimed that Mia had coached Dylan to make false accusations as revenge for his relationship with Soon-Yi. The allegations led to extensive investigations by both Connecticut State Police and child welfare authorities in New York, where the family maintained residences. The investigations included interviews with Dylan, psychological evaluations, and examinations by medical professionals attempting to determine the truth of the allegations. What followed was one of the most bitter, public, and emotionally destructive custody battles in entertainment industry history, with both sides using media coverage, leaked information, and public statements to advance their positions and discredit each other's credibility and character. The scandal dominated tabloid coverage for months, with detailed reports about family therapy sessions, police investigations, court proceedings, and psychological evaluations that exposed the most intimate details about their private lives, parenting arrangements, and family dynamics to public scrutiny and judgment. Major newspapers and magazines published extensive articles analyzing the allegations, the family's history, and the broader cultural implications of the case. The story became a cultural phenomenon that extended far beyond entertainment news to encompass discussions about child abuse, family dynamics, celebrity culture, and the intersection of private behavior and public reputation. The Connecticut state prosecutor ultimately decided not to bring criminal charges against Woody, citing concerns about Dylan's emotional well-being and the strength of the evidence, while noting that this decision did not constitute a finding of innocence. The Yale New Haven hospital team that evaluated Dylan concluded that her statements were inconsistent and possibly coached, though these findings were later disputed. However, a judge in the New York custody proceeding found Woody's behavior toward Dylan grossly inappropriate and awarded sole custody of Dylan and Moses to Mia, while denying Woody any visitation rights with Dylan and limiting his contact with Moses. The legal and emotional aftermath destroyed their creative partnership permanently and completely. Mia never appeared in another Woody Allen film, and their personal relationship ended in mutual accusations of betrayal, manipulation, and emotional damage that affected not only them, but also their children and extended families. The custody battle and its aftermath also marked the beginning of persistent allegations about Woody's behavior that would resurface periodically throughout his career, culminating decades later in the #MeToo movement's renewed focus on Dylan Farrow's accusations and their broader cultural significance. In 2014, Dylan published an open letter in the New York Times, detailing her allegations against Woody and criticizing the entertainment industry for continuing to celebrate his work despite her accusations. The letter reignited public discussion about the case and contributed to changing cultural attitudes about believing accusers and holding powerful figures accountable. The Soon-Yi relationship also continued after the destruction of Woody and Mia's partnership. Woody and Soon-Yi married in 1997 and have remained together, adopting 2 children and maintaining what appears to be a stable relationship despite the controversial circumstances of its beginning. For Mia, the aftermath of the relationship and scandal led to increased focus on her humanitarian work and advocacy for children's rights worldwide. She continued her work with UNICEF and became a vocal advocate for child protection and abuse prevention. The children involved were affected in different ways by the family's dissolution and the public nature of the scandal. Moses Farrow later publicly defended Woody and criticized Mia's account of their family life, while Dylan has maintained her allegations against Woody throughout her adult life. Ronan Farrow, Mia's son who may or may not be Woody's biological child, became an investigative journalist who played a crucial role in exposing Harvey Weinstein and launching the #MeToo movement. work that some observers saw as connected to his family's history with allegations against powerful men. The long-term impact of the Woody Allen-Mia Farrow scandal extended far beyond their personal lives to influence broader cultural conversations about celebrity, power, abuse allegations, and the relationship between personal behavior and artistic legacy. Their story became a template for how allegations against powerful figures are handled in the media, how custody battles involving celebrities affect children, and how the public processes conflicting narratives about private behavior and public reputation. For 12 years, Woody Allen and Mia Farrow had created one of cinema's most productive and creatively successful partnerships, while maintaining an unconventional personal relationship that seemed to serve both their artistic ambitions and emotional needs effectively. Their collaboration produced some of Woody's finest and most emotionally sophisticated films, including several that are considered classics of American cinema and continue to be studied and celebrated decades after their release. But the dramatic and scandalous end of their relationship demonstrated how personal betrayal and family dysfunction could completely destroy even the most successful creative partnerships, and how private conflicts between public figures could become cultural controversies that extended far beyond the individuals involved. The story of Woody and Mia remains one of cinema's most complex and troubling tales of love, creativity, family, and catastrophic personal failure. A partnership that produced lasting artistic achievement while ending in scandal, legal battles, and accusations that continue to influence public perception of both artists and the broader cultural conversations about power, abuse, and accountability decades later. The professional legacy of their collaboration includes some of the most sophisticated romantic comedies and family dramas in American cinema. Films like Hannah and Her Sisters, Purple Rose of Cairo, and Radio Days continue to be celebrated as examples of how personal relationships can enhance artistic achievement. Their working relationship demonstrated the creative possibilities that emerge when artists with complementary skills collaborate over extended periods, allowing both to develop talents that might not have been possible working independently. For Woody, the collaboration with Mia represented remarkable creative productivity and artistic growth. The films they made together explored themes of love, family, and mortality with greater emotional depth than much of his earlier work. But their partnership also serves as a cautionary tale about combining intimate relationships with creative collaboration, and how private betrayals can destroy public achievements when boundaries between art and life become blurred. The cultural impact of their relationship contributed to broader discussions about how society should respond to allegations involving public figures, particularly when those allegations involve children and family relationships. Decades later, the Woody Allen-Mia Farrow saga remains one of the most controversial celebrity scandals in entertainment history, with passionate defenders and critics continuing to argue about the truth and broader cultural significance. The story serves as a reminder that some of the most celebrated artistic collaborations in cinema history emerged from complex personal relationships that contained both creative inspiration and destructive potential, demonstrating how the intersection of public achievement and private behavior can create legacies that are simultaneously inspiring and deeply troubling for audiences and critics decades later. If this story gave you a new perspective, there's more coming. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next Untold moment.